Hi, I'm going to give a short tutorial on how to play the G major, C major, and D major chords on the guitar. So I'm going to move the camera around a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing. Here's my guitar. And let's bring it down this way. Give you a good view of my left hand. Okay. So there are a few different ways. We'll start with the G chord. There are a few different ways that you can play a G chord on a guitar, and your guitar teacher may have taught you one way. I really think it's useful to be able to play multiple different ways, multiple different G major chords. And some of them sound a little bit different. There's some ways they're just different ways to play the same one. So probably one of the first that you've heard is where you put your ring finger behind the 3rd fret on the high E string, and then on the A string or the 5th string, you put your index finger and middle finger up like that, and you have something like this. Now, in general use, I really don't use this very often, and part of the reason why is because this 3rd on the A, so this is a G chord, this G, A, B, so that's a 3rd right there. That 3rd right there, it does sound nice and full, but it can be a little bit muddy. So a lot of times what I usually do is I don't actually play the A string, so I mute it. So what I do is I let this finger take a little vacation, and I just mute that. And I think that I get a much clearer sound doing it that way than this way. And that's mostly just because this interval right here is just kind of too muddy. It's too small of an interval to be down that low in the range. So I usually leave that out. Okay. Now there are other ways that you can play G as well. Another shape that I do, same idea, but with different fingers. So I'll do the pinky down here, ring finger up here. This one's harder to do, in my opinion, because you're using weaker fingers, but I do recommend knowing how to do this, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So I actually use this one a lot. Depending on what key I'm playing in, I might use this more. So if I'm playing in the key of C, I like it because I don't have to move. You see how I hate that. So what I do is that right there. So you use your pinky there, your ring finger up there, and unless you've had a hand injury or something like that, you should be able to do that. It'll just take some time, but you'll get it. And then you can play the 3rd down like that, but like I said before, I like to leave out the 3rd. Because you only need really 1/3, and you've got the 3rd on the B string right there, okay? Because we know the triads, 1st, 3rd, 5th, right? So all of these notes are either 1st, 3rd, or 5th. So we already have 1/3 there, we don't need to double it. So I do it like that, okay? Now there's another kind of G chord that I also like to use, and I like to use it when playing in the key of G. If I'm doing more like country style, I like to have the more open one, but another one, it's a little blander, and you actually don't have a 3rd in there, so you can there's no 3rd in it, because you can have the 3rd down there. I don't like that voicing. So now you only have a 1st, a 5th, a 1st, a 5th, and a 1st, or 1, 5, 1, 5, 5. There. No 3rd. The nice thing about this is that I can play other chords really close. So in the key of G, you can do that or that, like that. So those are 3 different G chords that you can play. And I recommend learning all 3 of them. Start with whichever one is the most comfortable for you, but learn the other 2. Learn how to play it with or without the low third on the A string there. Okay, the next chord is a C chord. This is a pretty standard fingering. It usually is shown in most beginner books. One really important thing that I recommend doing is that you mute the low E string, because your root, your first, is on the A string. So it sounds muddy if you do that, because you have a low third there, and we're not really, we're not trying to play a first inversion C. So there's C right there. That's one way to play C. I really like it. I don't know if I never really do that. My hand says, no, don't do that. So I must not ever do that. So that's one way of playing C. Another way is a kind of a C2, which is a really nice voicing. So you can do that. So now, instead of playing my index finger, I do this. And now on the B string, I'm playing at the 3rd fret with my ring finger. So that's another C I really like. You can also add your pinky up there and get that high G on the E string, high E string. This one you can also leave out the 3rd if you want. I don't think the 3rd sounds so bad now that it's a little bit higher. So sometimes I leave it in, sometimes I don't. Up to you. I just kind of recommend doing whatever feels like it fits the song best. Sometimes it's a really nice chord, but sometimes it just doesn't sound right. So there's some different ways to do C. Now if I'm playing in the key of C, I like to use this right here. It's nice because if you want to do a sort of little country waltz sort of thing. And you can go easily to G. And then... so that's the C chord. Usually if I'm playing in the key of G, if I want more open chords, I'll do like this. If I want to have a different kind of voicing, maybe one that's a little bit blander. This is very common for like contemporary church music with guitars. And then D. Again, now your 3rd is on the D string. So I don't recommend playing the other strings. So whereas with the C, I usually I double mute it actually. So I touch that string with my ring finger, and then I also wrap my thumb around too. And just make sure that low E doesn't ring out. It makes it less muddy. So the D, I also mute the low E, and then I try to stay off the A. Sometimes it rings out. If you're playing with a band and you've got somebody playing bass guitar, that's not going to sound too bad. That's not a horribly muddy sound, but I try to adjust my strumming so that I'm only hitting the top 4 strings. But I like to wrap my thumb around and mute both of those. Mute those strings just so they don't accidentally ring out. So I like to keep that nice and clean. That's what I do. That way you're not leaving it all to your right hand to only play the right strings. The other strings will ring in sympathy even if you can hear those other 2 strings just still going. So that's a way to play D right there. And I don't really do, there are other ways you can play D. This one's kind of nice too, but for most of your chord playing, this is what I do. You can do a first inversion D, so that's with a third in the bass, which is also really nice. And again, I don't like that muddy interval right there. So even though those belong in the chord, I try not to have small intervals low in the range. So I thumb this right here and mute the A with the soft part of my thumb. And that's a really nice one. And then another one, since we're playing a 5 chord here, you can do a D7 chord like this. And it doesn't always fit the song, but when it does, it's really nice. And so now we're doing ring finger, middle finger, ring finger, and index finger back here, like that. So that's my explanation of how to play those chords. I realize that this video is now, I'm past the 11-minute mark, so it's not a very short video after all. But I hope that helps. I know that's not a very concise way, but I hope that it shows you some different ways that you can play those chords and do it easily. I can create more videos if they're wanted, but I wanted to show kind of basics on playing the guitar. And of course, as always, I want to make sure, if you're a beginner, that you're playing with the tips of your fingers, and that as much as possible, except in certain circumstances where you do it on purpose, you want to make sure that you're only touching the strings that you're supposed to be fretting and not the other ones. So like with the C, make sure not to touch that high E string right there that you're tiptoeing right there. And as you develop as a guitarist, focus. You might not be able to see it very well. If it will focus, well, you can see my fingers don't look super pretty, but that's what's going to happen. You're going to get some calluses there, so when you start, it's going to hurt like crazy, but it will hurt less if you practice regularly. You'll get those calluses and it won't hurt so bad. So hope this helps. Thank you for watching.